Friends, let's all sit back and take a moment to be incredibly thankful that none of us were alive in the 1600s. Let's get started. Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba-ba. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Oktoberfest here on Thumb Together. My name is Andrew Fantasia. Thank you so much for tuning in. As usual, if you enjoyed this video, please feel free to give it a thumbs up and give some love to that subscribe button as well. Otherwise, a spell will be cast on me and everything will just go downhill from there. This is our final obscure gem in Oktoberfest. After this, we're going to move on to the third and final category. But this obscure gem, it might not seem obscure to you because it only came out a couple years ago, but I have a lot of trouble finding people who have heard of it and who have seen it. So I wanted to call your attention to one of the greatest horror movies I've ever seen in my life, The Witch. The Witch hit the Sundance Festival in January 2015 and then hit theaters a year later in February 2016. It takes place in New England in the 1630s, which, if you know your history, is prime time for paranoia and witch hunts. And one of the most impressive things of this all-around impressive movie is that director and writer Robert Eggers decided, okay, if I'm going to make a movie that takes place in the 1630s, I'm going to go all the way with that. And he did. Guys, a whole lot of historical experts have watched this movie. People who work at museums, people who work at like those pioneer villages and different just historical recreational sites, and every single one of them went on record, including on the DVD itself in interviews, saying that The Witch was so accurate, it's scary. The Witch is, according to them, the most accurate depiction of life in this period of time that has ever been put to film. That includes the way the set was built, the way the wardrobe was designed, and the way the dialogue was written. Because this whole film is not necessarily in English, it's in Old English, and that's old with an E at the end, so you know it's old. If thou wished to hear a vexing story upon this eve, thou must only put The Witch into yon DVD player, and thou wilt be sufficed. That's how everybody in this film talks. It's Old English, it's accurate Old English, and everybody plays it so well that you don't even miss a beat. It feels natural. It doesn't feel forced at all. So even if you're not a horror buff, even if you're just a history buff, and you love the idea of movies that really accurately portray different time periods, The Witch is going to scratch that itch. So what's this movie about? Well, you know it takes place in New England during the whole witch frenzy, so you know it's not about anything good. The story follows a family, a husband, a wife, and their 5 children, who are excommunicated from the colony where they live. They were in a Plymouth colony, one of those typical, Puritan Plymouth colonies, but there was a religious dispute that the colony members had with the father, and the father refused to budge, so they just banished him and his whole family from the colony. And now the family is thinking, okay, we don't have access to, the food and water that the town provided, so we have to make our own way in the world. And they wander through the wilderness for about a couple days or so, until they come to a field right on the edge of a dark, mysterious wood. And it's right there on this field in the middle of the unforgiving frontier where the father decides we are going to build our new home and our new life. So they build a house, they build a farm, they start growing crops, time passes, but then shit starts going bad. This isn't like the Blair Witch Project where it's like maybe there's a witch and maybe there's not and we're never going to show her. There is 100% a witch in The Witch, and you see her fairly early on, even though, you don't really get a good look at her. You see that there is an old woman in the woods doing terrible things. And I wouldn't dream of spoiling the kind of terrible things she's doing, but they are terrible enough that I will say there's no punches pulled in this movie, folks. The first time you see the witch, she's doing some of the worst things you could imagine a person doing, and it only just keeps getting worse and worse from there. I love that the movie was upfront about this. I love that it wasn't like, oh, we don't know if there's a witch, you gotta wait till the end to see her for half a second. This was upfront about the witch's existence, and then for the rest of the movie, you just watch like a train wreck where you can't look away. You know that she is going to destroy this family piece by piece with her dark magic. It's just a matter of how and when. Because see, there's the beauty of it, folks. We know the witch is real. The family doesn't. The family lives in a time where everything is about praising God and everything is about religion. And yes, there are whispers of witches because it's that time of history, but everyone is hesitant to believe that there might actually be a witch targeting them. So when something bad happens around the farm, everyone's initial instinct is to, hey, let's blame one of the kids. And when the kids insist they did nothing wrong, everybody becomes defensive, calls them a liar, and said, you lied, you blasphemed, you're going to go to hell for your sins, now you have to beg forgiveness from the Lord. And it becomes this tug of war of religious tension and overzealousness and fear and paranoia. And you can just feel this perfect storm of all these horrid emotions swirling inside this house. And you know that it's only a matter of time before they all crack under the pressure. And the witch is probably just sitting deeper in the trees, just rubbing her hands together and thinking, God, this is so easy. I barely had to do anything at all to these people. It also displays a lot of the whole old school naivete of the time period where, for example, if the son is out hunting in the woods and he doesn't find, a rabbit or something to bring home for supper, he thinks it's because he's being punished by God for something he did, 2 weeks ago where he had a thought that was a sinful thought, and so he spends the rest of the night berating himself for having that sinful thought. And you can just see how living in this time period would create a whole flock of people who are absolutely out of their minds with restraint, because they're trying to restrain themselves from having human thoughts and emotions. And because of that, everybody is just constantly on edge. Just think of when you've talked to a person who's really hungry or really tired, so they're cranky and irritable because they just can't have what they want and they're forced to stay awake or forced to stay hungry for however many hours. Imagine a whole world full of those people because they're forced to not think like as is their nature, and instead to just sit there and constantly be penitent and constantly be praying and begging forgiveness for things that aren't even really wrong. The moral of the story is here, and it's breathtakingly well done, that this was a world where you could not win if you lived in it. You could not win. You could not be a happy individual if you lived in this time period, because you are constantly being made to feel guilty for every little shred of happiness that you had. And considering that the witches in this movie and in folklore of New England at the time were said to be working for the devil himself, that seems like the perfect place and the perfect time for the devil to do his work. A place where nobody's ever going to be happy anyway. You can tell that there's pages worth of stuff I want to say about this movie, and it is one of my favorite horror movies ever. I would have put it in the next category, which is going to be my all-time favorites, but it's still not well known. It's still, I say it and people look at me like, huh, what, which, who? So I needed to put it in Obscure Gems because I needed to shed some light on this puppy. But now, if you're a fan of like slasher movies like Friday the 13th and you just like stuff that's fast-paced, I'm sure right now you're listening to me and you're hearing the words farmhouse, Puritan, Old English, and you're thinking this is going to be the slowest moving film of all time and you will stay far away from it. I guarantee you it's not slow moving, my friends. This movie starts right away with the fear and the chills and the witch herself, and it doesn't stop till the final second. The witch is always around, even if you don't see her. She's always casting spells on the family and working her magic, literally, to get what she wants, which we're not even really sure what she wants, but I assume it's just to cause mayhem and do devilish things, because that's what witches in New England folklore would do. This is set during the harvest time, so it's really spooky and Halloweeny. It's always gray clouds and brown leaves and black woods. Everything is just beautifully shot. I can't get enough of this. I watched it 2 nights ago to prepare for this video, and I already feel like watching it again just from talking about it. If you're a horror fan, take it from me, watch The Witch. Don't be intimidated by the Old English vocabulary. Don't be intimidated by the strange concept. You are going to have a good time. And I guarantee the ending is going to scare the hell out of you. But that is The Witch, a Halloween movie that doesn't come any more highly recommended as far as I'm concerned. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for listening to my Obscure Gems. Next time on Oktoberfest, we're going to dive right into the deep end and talk about straight up my favorite horror movies of all time. Thanks for watching, everybody. Until next time, adios.